A full reset underway for the Jets in New York. Depending on who you believe, Aaron Rodgers may still be part of it. Is that going to attract your next head coach and GM, or will some candidates not want the future Hall of Famer around? Plus, Daniel Jones released, the now former Giants quarterback, going to have his choice of teams to go help from a backup role. Will Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll last much longer now? Patience. That will be the theme of today's episode, plus job openings, lining up candidates, college football playoff, and more here on Scouting the League. Everyone, and welcome to Scouting the League. More shakeup in the NFL this week after a number of upsets and the college level. You add a foot injury in there for a big name quarterback. It's all going to shake it up a little bit. We'll get to all of that. First, we have to mention the huge announcement that the Shrine Bowl made with a whole host of buffs heading to the game. Again, big news. Regardless of what you think of the players individually or the game as a whole, it is a significant deal for Eric Galko and the Shrine game. We know CU, if nothing else, adds eyes, adds attention, both good things for all-star games and good thing for the East-West game. I'm sure Jim Nagy and the Senior Bowl are looking for a trump card, maybe something up their sleeve. Again, Neil, they're the number one game, but when you are number one, everyone's coming for you. Everyone is, trying to outdo you, gain an edge. So, again, big deal for the East-West game.
Yeah, it's just the latest momentum builder for what they're doing at the Shrine, and I really respect the job that Eric's doing. This is a major coup. There's no other way to put it. I think it's, generally speaking, this is, I think, QB1 in the draft, and anytime you bring a player of that station in, it's a major win in any All-Star game. That's kind of unheard of, quite frankly, and so that's major. Now, will this go the distance?
That's a great question.
You see players backing out of all-star games all the time. There's nothing really binding there, but if nothing else, it'll be a good deal of bounce, I guess, from this media-wise, certainly, and further puts the Shrine Bowl on the map. I mean, I can't say enough, and I think anyone that came on from the industry would say also how much access Eric has given people, how much, I don't know. It's just a really professionally run event now. And while the facts are that the Senior Bowl still gets more talent, this is a big momentum shift. And I think it's a big plus for Eric. And again, I salute and recognize the job they're doing over there. Good for him.
Yeah. Again, you referenced QB1, obviously Shadir Sanders. No consensus. Maybe next week we'll get an idea. We got Jordan Reed on from ESPN coming over again. We'll get Jordan's thoughts on Shadir, on maybe some of those other, those other buffs, other quarterback ones, other guys headed to the Shrine game. Again, if nothing else, it's maybe balancing the scales a little bit between East, West, and Senior Bowl. Again, give Jim tons of credit for what he's built. But again, like I said, when you're number one, people are coming for you, so you better got to stay on top of your game. So we'll get into all that more. Again, make sure you tune in next week for Jordan. Today, make sure you're helping us out. Like, subscribe, share this podcast wherever you are listening. If you're watching on YouTube, please hit that subscribe button. Also want your feedback, your interactions. Help us out each week, and we, of course, love to hear from you. We appreciate hearing from you. We've already heard from him, as always, joined by the best in the business when it comes to tracking all front office movement across the NFL and dipping into that college as well. Neil Stratton, he is at Inside the League on X, and his website, of course, is InsideTheLeague.com. The soon-to-be three-time author, continuing to put the finishing touches on his book, all about that 2016 NFL Draft. One I'm excited to get more into detail as we get closer. Neil, how's the book coming? Still putting some finishing touches on it?
Hey, we have. I've sent the manuscript to the editor. He sent it back to me. I've got to look at it for a few last brushstrokes. If there's anyone out there who's really good on Audible and recording all that kind of stuff, I'm all ears. Easy to find. That's our next big thing is reading it, and that's Boy, finding time for that's not going to be easy between now and April, but we got to get it up there so people can listen to it as well. But yeah, looking all systems go, and really excited about it, and really excited about what we came up with, and just so appreciative of all the scouts who have weighed in, given me their take on things from 2016, whether they're on the record or off the record. Some really interesting stories to tell, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun for people to read.
Yeah, make sure you mark your calendar. It's going to come right around the draft time, April of 2025. And we're getting close to 2025. I'm going to have to get used to writing that last digit correctly. I'll inevitably do it wrong.
And I may add that Roderick David does not appear in the book, and we are saving that. We're going to have a very special, maybe one, maybe two episodes on here where we just talk about 2016 in anticipation of the book. Roger's got great takes, as he always does, stories, all those kind of things. So something to look forward to in second quarter of 2025.
Yeah, it was a fun draft. Again, set up my, at the time, Atlanta Falcons for a Super Bowl run. So going to be plenty to talk about there, right down to the last hour before that draft started. I think about it, and it's a lot of fun, a lot of good memories from that one. So obviously that's Neil. Look for that book. Look for it coming April. I, of course, am Roderick Dave, the former scout for the Atlanta Falcons. Also spent the 2013 year with the Tennessee Titans. At Right Step ADV on Twitter for me. My website is rsafootball.com. You can get my full story there. Neil, I found it interesting. I was having a conversation with an agent this week. And as we were talking through some stuff, he had no idea my story, my background. Again, it's something that it seems to go away, and then all of a sudden it'll pop back up. Again, as I call it, my firing story, because, again, I just didn't get fired. Again, there's obviously changes in the White House, changes in the landscape, changes the way this country is viewing maybe COVID as a whole. But, again, lots of people view it very differently. Again, my story, referring to that 2021 fateful day when I was fired by the Falcons via Zoom, of course, as I was sitting in Lansing, Michigan, for choosing not to get the COVID vaccine after applying for that religious exemption. It was not cordial. It was not a pretty process, but with that change, of course, I am here with you now. Again, my website, rsafootball.com, has the full story, has a few more details. Happy to talk about it more. I'm sure I've talked about it here and there along the way. If you want to go back, look into the archives, it's out there. But again, at the end of the day, I am here still consulting, still get to do my film work with athletes, work with Neil very closely on a number of different things, and of course, bring you Scouting the League each week. For all of that, I am thankful, and this is kind of a special week to be thankful. With Thanksgiving tomorrow, make sure you are counting your blessings. I can promise you, no matter where you are this week, you have some. The more we all count them each day, each week, and each month, the better off we will be. We, of course, want to thank our Lord Jesus for the food on the table, the jobs we have, the friends and family in our lives, and the salvation that he offers freely. There's no question we all have plenty to be thankful for, Neil. I know you, your family, our relationship, everything that I'm thankful for. We all have our things to be thankful for sure.
No doubt. I mean, we could spend the whole podcast talking about that, and probably should. But yeah, I encourage everyone to remember that when we're all saying grace around the table tomorrow, and we certainly will as well.
Yeah. Thankful on the football side, the Buckeyes, the Ducks, the Bulldogs obviously had good weekends this last weekend, big wins. Again, Boise State, SMU, they're making their case to stay in that top 12 as well. Man, a sneaky Notre Dame team, perhaps somebody that, a team kind of flying under the radar a little bit. Again, where are you at, Neil? Top 15 teams. Again, the Longhorns all of a sudden maybe have a question at quarterback. If you're looking at the AP, the AFCA, again, your top 8 are set. Again, maybe a couple of differences in there. 9 to 12, 13 really set. Again, you've kind of got your top, you want to call it 15 teams. Who belongs, who doesn't belong, who is for real? What should we be looking at the rest of the way here?
There's some teams that I just don't know about. Notre Dame is an interesting team. When they lost to NIU, I remember reading a story somewhere saying, this is it for them, talking about their schedule ahead and how difficult that was, and how, it looks like the Marcus Freeman era is probably over and nothing could be further from the truth. What a rebound. What a great job they've done over there. And, obviously the NIU game was an anomaly, and
Yeah.
they've played really well. That you look at the Hurricanes. I mean, I it's funny to think that Cam Ward was really expected to be part of the draft class last year, and probably goes, I don't know, early day three, maybe with a great spring, he inches up into day two. Now he's in the conversation for QB1, and maybe, especially if the next month goes well, could solidify his position there. Texas is a team that at one point after the Michigan win, I thought, wow, this is a team that's clearly going to be undefeated. But we've seen that they've had their struggles. There's certainly some uncertainty at the quarterback position now. Looking at Ohio State, and I'm just kind of hitting on a bunch of teams here. I really thought Indiana hung tough with them in the first half. I didn't get to see the second half, but clearly they pulled away and kind of
Special
showed who they
teams.
are. And that's a tough. I mean, come on, they're in Columbus. That was
That's
always
a
going to
tough
be a
place to
long
play.
shot for
Yep.
the Hoosiers, but I think they did kind of assert their dominance in the second half. They've got a lot of really great pieces, and then what we talked about before we got started. There are two G5 teams that are in the projection for the CFP, and who would have said that before the season
Yeah.
started? And I think to some degree, that's a measure of how much the SEC teams have kind of beaten up on each other this year. I did not have Alabama losing decisively last week
Yeah. They looked
to Oklahoma on my
out
bingo
of
card.
sorts. Yeah.
Yeah, and I still here we are in at Thanksgiving. I still don't know who Alabama is, and I think a lot of people don't know who Alabama is. And I've been a big advocate for Jalen Milroe. We talked about whether he was a first rounder or not before the season starts. I've been, there were certainly I was, and I'm excited about him because he's from my hometown. But I think he brings a lot to the table. But wow, when they've lost decisively, and it's hard to kind of make that case. So
Yeah.
it's a fascinating year for college football. There isn't that one dominant team. Even Oregon, I think, is while they're certainly a great team. I don't. If they lost to a team, I wouldn't be surprised.
Mm-hmm.
But it's been a very entertaining season if you love just kind of the volatile nature of the game, and we certainly have seen that. I mean, I don't think there's anyone, quite frankly, that if they wind up winning this whole thing, it would surprise me because there doesn't seem to be that one team where you're like, oh wow, they're definitely number one.
Yeah. Could you imagine in a 4-team playoff trying to figure out the top 4 this year? I
Oh
mean,
god,
obviously we're not there, but again, it would be. I mean, if there's ever a year for a top 12, and again, maybe
boy.
everything else that has gone around that expansion to 12 has played into it. But again, no dominant team. Again, you referenced it. Texas has looked like that dominant team. Quinn Ewers, obviously a question now. Hey, you've got Arch Manning in the background. Again, I think there's a lot of people that would make the argument this Texas team's not in any different spot with Arch as the quarterback all year. Quinn has not taken the steps to be
Agreed.
QB1. Is he in the top 5 quarterback? He may end up with a decision to make, which leaves Texas with a decision to make. And again, not an enviable one it's a tough decision to make. It's win-win. You got Quinn Ewers or Arch Manning. So again, you're probably going to be fine. Again, it's going to be, that's a whole nother conversation on what Quinn's going to do, go out, come back. Again, the step back that Carson Beck has made. Again, Georgia's still right there, and nobody's going to want to play Georgia. No question. That defense, that whole team continuing to get better. Again, Carson flashes, maybe a little bit more consistent. Ohio State, obviously you mentioned them, flexed their muscle against Indiana. Wisconsin nearly gets the upset against its Oregon at home. Again, Wisconsin, tough place to play. But again, Wisconsin showed that they can win close games, beating Ohio State by 1. Again, I think it's hard to argue those aren't the top 2 teams in the country. But again, you've got a team like Clemson's funny to me. Again, you mentioned Marcus Freeman. It was Clemson at the beginning of the year. They get rolled by Georgia. Dabo's done. Again, can't live in this world, can't live with the portal. All of a sudden, they're a top 10 team that Cade Klubnik has taken the steps. And again, patience for that. Yeah, obviously Dabo's done what he's done. He's not going anywhere except on his terms at this point. Again, Clemson's all of a sudden a team where you're kind of like, all right, how good is this team actually? They've been ready to play. Again, you mentioned your, Ashton Janty led Boise State. You've got SMU teams that, all of a sudden they're going to sneak up on you. You're going to overlook them. You've got, the Alabamas that can't score points sometimes. SMU can score some points. Boise State's going to run the ball. Again, in the rest of that group, again, Penn State, a tough loss to Ohio State at home. Again, does anybody fear them? No, but all of a sudden they're going to be able to find a way to just knock you off because they've got some good players. Joel Carter on the edge.
On them. Absolutely.
Tennessee, again, you want to throw Tennessee, all of a sudden Heupel's they can score quickly if they get on a roll. You've got Miami, outside of that Georgia Tech loss. Again, who is it? Indiana. Again, Indiana, 2 special teams plays away from really keeping that game close versus the Buckeyes. Obviously, that changes the momentum of the game, swings everything. But again, it's going to be long way to go here. We got rivalry week this week. Again, Ohio State got to get it done finally against Michigan, something that they should be able to do. Rivalry games across the country, which again, take out everything, throw everything out the window. Rivalry games are going to bring out the best, hopefully on both sides. So a lot of fun still to be had.
Question for you. Now, here we are. I'm sitting here in Houston, Texas. All right. If A&M, which is playing at home and which suffered a loss that they weren't expecting last week.
Yep.
So there's no pressure on them. If they beat Texas, does it knock Texas out of the CFP? Probably not, but no. I mean, so Texas is locked in.
I think Texas is locked in, yes.
Okay, could it move A&M into it?
Yes, they would have to win out. They've got to not just beat Texas. They've got to go and win I believe that would qualify for them for the SEC championship game. They've got to win the SEC championship game.
I think you're right. Yeah. Interesting times.
It is. Again, you pick that, all of a sudden Texas A&M sitting there around, 15 here, 18, 19, 20, 3 losses. Again, it's the old, are you an SEC fan? Well, they're all really good teams. They just beat up on each other. If you're not from the SEC, it's everybody's overrated. Nobody's all actually that good. Who's right? Again, go debate it around the water cooler, and we'll find out who is right come the end of the year. And again, it's anybody's. It's wide open. Again, it's hard not to pick, one of those top 4. I think the top 4 will end up separating themselves a little bit, and then. But again, you start throwing a playoff in there, and any given Sunday, that's why they line up and play the game. And teams like Colorado had a chance. Obviously, getting knocked off by Kansas the way they did probably eliminates them. Alabama, hard to imagine them making their way back in after the way they looked this week against Oklahoma. Which again, we talked about the patience. Another guy that a lot of people were ready to write off is Coach Venables down at Oklahoma. He had that team ready to go. That's a good spot. Again, patience is going to make or break these programs. And we've already seen it being written about across the country. Again, the expectation, Neil, is that there's going to be less movement this year than there was last year. Again, you've got roster decisions to be made. You've got buyouts that have changed things. Is that something you're hearing, something you're reading, again, through conversations? Are we expecting less movement specifically on the college football side this year?
That's what the people that represent the major coaches are telling, the ones that I talk to have told me. Now, at the same time, we've got 13 G5 openings right now. It's not even Thanksgiving yet. I don't know. With that said, we're looking at revenue sharing, and that's looming. And the cost of that, no one really knows. $20 million, where's it coming from? How, all those variables have made it so where, I think a Brian Kelly is safe. I think a Brent Venables is safe. A number of these coaches that are at the marquee programs that maybe haven't performed the way they thought they would will make it another year. And that's probably vexing to a lot of fans out there, but it is what it is. I think one of the most slept on stories so far is what's going to happen after April 4th or April 5th, whatever, when the final judgment from Judge Cowan comes down and we basically begin to start to know what college football is going to look like in the future and how it's going to be set up and all those kind of things. And I think that's probably something we could talk about for a full podcast. It's something we're going to probably look at the Combine at our professional meeting on Thursday, the 27th, I think, of February. It's a big, big story. We don't know what it's going to look like. We don't know how it's going to change the nature of P4 football, the nature of G5 football. Will there still be G5 football the way we're expecting it? I don't know what the answers are, and I don't think anyone knows. And I think we've kind of touched on that in the past, but big story and kind of looming. And for all of us who love college football and the shape that it's taken so far, we're just hoping that it's not going to radically shift. But it very, very well could be in the next 6 months.
Yeah. Again, change is inevitable. We don't want it to change too much. We want it to be incremental. Again, you talked about an April decision. Seems like with so many of these things, it's, hey, we're going to make this little tweak in April and then kick another big decision down the road. Again, you can only kick the can so long.
Yeah.
Some, including the Saints, would tell you we're just going to keep kicking it and eventually it's going to catch up to us. Well, they'll keep trying to kick it and, win now. And again, so far they've somehow kicked the can a little bit longer with the new interim coach. And
we trust.
Not to pour any salt on any wounds for you, Neil, but the Saints are in a slightly better spot than the Jets. Again, let's get into it. So the Jets, again, you've got Saleh gone, Joe Douglas now gone. Again, when he was hired in 2019, widely viewed as an excellent hire, a guy that had been through the process, had maybe turned some jobs down already, looking for the right situation. Excellent evaluator, good person. On the leader standpoint, I haven't worked for him. I've heard yes. Again, really checked all the boxes that we would say are important, different than those elements that maybe an owner's looking for. But again, he had a decent run, maybe longer than average even in New York, but really everything came crashing down this year. Again, when in October when we talked about it, again, we really talked on what owners were looking for. But again, you think about the negative Hassan Reddick situation and how quickly that was resolved when allegedly ownership got involved. You think about obviously the Aaron Rodgers situation. Again, hard to say no to Aaron Rodgers then. We'll talk about what that means for the next GM and head coach in a little bit. You've got obviously Devontae Adams trade. You've got major giant misses like Mekhi Becton when you look at the players after him. Again, hindsight's 2020. But you also have to look Garrett Wilson and Sauce Gardner. Two really good. Again, you're looking at potential Pro Bowl picks on a yearly basis that you have to be at. Hey, those are Joe's guys too. So again, a really kind of up and down. Again, depending on whose side you are, you can make the case, which is really a tough spot to be in. But what it sounds like in New York, when you get to a situation where that relationship is just untenuous, there's no way you can get back together. To me, that's what it sounds like happened in New York. The ownership was ready to go one way. The GM maybe different philosophy. Ultimately, the owner's going to win out. Was more patience needed here? Was this a situation that had gone as far as it could? Again, talk to me about your perspective of this whole Jet situation.
I don't know Joe Douglas. I never have met him before, but when I was doing research for this book, it talks about he was college director with the Bears back then. He was really high on Dak Prescott. Okay, if you mess up the quarterback decision, it's almost something you can't recover from. Again, in modern rules and the way the game's set up and all that, Zach Wilson blew up in their face. I don't know if there was something that I don't have any reason to think they mishandled the situation. We don't know all the details there, but the facts are that he just didn't take that step. They were proactive to get Rodgers, and I think that was the right move. You're not going to get an Aaron Rodgers, a 2015 Aaron Rodgers. Obviously, they had to take what they could get. That hasn't really worked out the way they thought. I admire them for going out and getting Devontae Adams. I think that you always have to take advantage of that window, especially given that their defense was solid. It didn't work out, but I look at the staff that Douglas put together. They are very strong. We hand out our scouting list. We don't at ITO. We don't make those selections. The scouts do, and consistently, Dom Green, Jonathan are both guys that have won multiple awards there. The point is, I think Douglas did everything he could. I think you've got an ownership that got a little impatient, and that's what we're seeing now. the question now is, what direction do they go? Are they going to go out and try to hire a marquee head coach who brings his own GM? Or are they going to they're going to kind of go more traditional and bring in a strong GM who hires a head coach, kind of what they had with JD and with Saleh? I don't know. I'm not privy to that, but I think if I think it still can be an attractive job, given that the defense, I think, is solid there. The question is it all hinges on is this Rodgers' last year there, and I don't know the cap ramifications of that. It's not a great class for quarterbacks. That makes it that kind of muddies the waters a bit more. I didn't get on Tankathon before we got on here. I'm not sure exactly what they're projected to pick, but even if they were in the top five, are they sure about a quarterback they would take there that would be a savior? I don't know what the answer is there, but I don't know. It's a very uncertain situation, and I think the Jets probably could have been a little bit more patient, but obviously you're kind of in a pressure cooker there. You're in the fishbowl with so many people, given the fact that you're in New York, so it can't be easy for them. But I am eager to see what their next move is, because I'm not sure how I would handle it given all the circumstances there.
Yeah. It's in the scouting world, you trust your sources, you listen to your sources, you listen to a lot of information and, filter through it. Again, 2021 draft, again, Trevor Lawrence was number one. There was no question about that. It probably didn't matter who the team was. If you, or I'd say if I trust the sources and what I was hearing, Zach Wilson was the owner's pick. It didn't matter what the front office, maybe even what the coaching staff, Zach Wilson was their pick. So again, I step back and all right, so if that's the owner's pick, you can't put that one on Joe D. Now, again, if you're on the Jet side and you don't like Joe D, again, he allowed the owner to pick him. No, that's the owner's pick. Again, we talked about first round is the owner's pick, second round, third round, the rest of the draft, those are the GM's picks. Again, if you want to believe that mantra, again, good front office, not good front office. Again, those are all philosophies, the way you go through it. Again, was Aaron Rodgers Hall of Fame quarterback? We're not going to question that. Was the expectation that he'd come in and change that franchise? Yes, that was the expectation. He had still played very well up to that point. Again, he had been to the playoffs. Obviously, the Achilles injury, you want to take that and get rid of that. Kick that out, because again, you can't factor in injuries, especially a catastrophic for a guy like Aaron Rodgers, who had some collarbones, had some minor stuff, but largely played through it. Again, take the Achilles out of it. So again, you reset it again a little bit for Joe D. Again, you look at the overall body of work, good staff, good coaching staff, a roster that going into this year, everybody thought was, again, maybe a wide receiver away. Everybody had him connected with Devontae already. They were going to make a move. I mean, for where it's gone, how badly it's gone, again, it's tough to reconcile it for Joe, because, again, at the end of the day, you're the GM, you're responsible. Yes, we all get that. Is he going to get another chance? I'm going to bet on Joe D to get another chance to be a GM and put another roster together. But, again, this situation is what it is. Again, you talk about the importance of that relationship, the owner, the GM, the head coach. Again, for some organizations, it is just the owner and the head coach, the GM and the head coach. The owner is far enough away, over the top. They're not inserting themselves. It does not sound like that's the situation with Woody and the Jets. So again, that three-way, that tripod of relationship has to be in sync. As soon as they get out of sync, the whole thing's going to fall over. Again, even a Hall of Fame quarterback playing, the way he is not going to be able to reconcile that. So that takes us over, just maybe a couple miles away in New York, sharing the same stadium, the Giants. The Giants are now in a situation where there were reports that, again, at this point they've been wrong, that Daboll and Joe Schoen are done. They've been fired. Again, are they going through the motions? Do they have any authority to make any moves at this point? Again, depending on who you believe, that's out there. But again, the quarterback's already been cut. Daniel Jones, first-round pick. Again, after the practice squad incident, the practice incident. Again, you only have 53 on your roster. You've got your practice squad players. if Daniel Jones is out there and he wants to go stand at safety for scout team, again, probably not a good move from an optics standpoint. Does it really move the needle that much? Again, only in a New York market and the media the way it is. Does it cause Daniel Jones to really? Again, I don't think it ultimately changes. Daniel Jones gets released, moved to third string. You're not even the backup. You're the third string. You're going to be inactive. Asks for the release. Again, you do him right. Again, my opinion, you're already paying him. You don't have any responsibility to release him unless you just, again, don't want to fight the PR of it. Daniel Jones released. Goes back to that question of patience. Joe Schoen, Brian Daboll, they drafted him. They signed him. He has not panned out. How much patience can the Giants have with these two guys to, eventually get it right, or get it right with this roster? As they've got some pieces that you should like in terms of pass rusher, wide receiver, offensive line.
They've they obviously got the receiver pick right this year. I just have a lot of sympathy. Again, Shane is someone else I don't know, but I have a tremendous amount of sympathy for him because Daniel Jones. You want to talk about having a salary drive and being up for your contract at exactly the right moment in your career. That's Daniel Jones. They had a really difficult situation, a really difficult decision to make, and that probably prompted the decision on the running back as well, Barkley, who's having a phenomenal year. And how much does that kind of factor into this decision, given what they've done in their own division to lose him to the Eagles? I think he deserves more rope, but you have two factions in New York in the ownership where you've got one that's probably really patient and one that's really impatient. And I think the Tisch side has had more currency in the last few years, seen more decisions made that kind of lean that direction. And so I would not be optimistic if I was Joe Schoen. I think he's another guy that deserves another shot at it if he does. It's just, it just boils down to the quarterback so much. And they had some difficult decisions to make, and, those haven't panned out, but I don't think that's necessarily emblematic of who they are as evaluators and who they are of, leaders of the team, what have you. I think that I think there should be patience shown here, but I don't know if it's going to happen or not because it is New York, and the Eagles have really kind of asserted their dominance, and it seems like they're falling farther behind the pack, and so maybe they feel like a move needs to be made. But again, I just don't see any quick fixes in this draft when it comes to the signal caller position. And if you're expecting you're going to draft someone and everything's to be made better, I don't see that happening. Now, maybe in a year, I look really foolish for saying that, but I don't expect there's anyone in this draft that's going to make that kind of difference.
Yeah. Again, you think about those factors, and I would make the argument, without being in the building, you have no idea what the building's still like. Again, right. Where are the players at? Now, it showed up in comments of some of those leaders, Neighbors, the pass rusher. There were, I think, 4 or 5 different players who really questioned the effort after this last week's Giants game. That's a concern. Again, that's something you can see from the outside. And that's where, again, if you're sitting there in ownership, like, it's one thing. Again, I think back to the 2020 season when the Falcons started 0-5. Games that the Falcons absolutely should have won, that I put maybe a couple on them on decisions Matt Ryan made. Special teams were a factor in some of them. You put on that film, and again, one of the things that made it so hard when DQ and Thomas got let go was you felt like you probably should have won 3 of those games. You were in all 5 of them. And again, you start 0-5, which again, nobody wants to be at 0-5. But again, for an owner who had not shown patience in a couple ways previous, and again, I won't get into the rest of it. It felt like it was a really hard move at 0-5 because the team was playing in a certain way. The Giants kind of don't feel that way right now, where they're, again, maybe guys are checking out. You're getting wide receivers already throwing shade, rookie wide receivers. Now, really productive, high picks that have to lead the culture. But you've got guys that are already starting to maybe check out on that. Not a good situation. Maybe tells you what the temperature is inside of that building. But again, it all goes into that. Again, if everything is right inside the building, the GM and the head coach are still aligned, the team is still playing hard. We've maybe, again, an injury, a wrong decision. Again, is it an owner's decision? Again, what was the ownership's group's decision influence in the Daniel Jones contract? Again, always hard to see from the outside who was the most involved. Is that absolute Joe Schoen? And then I'm going to throw the factor in that they did the offseason Hard Knocks. A lot of really bad clips of Joe Schoen that I would make the argument, and I think I tweeted out the other day, if I'm ever forced to do the offseason Hard Knocks, I got my own camera crew, my own editors, putting the flip side of that. Again, the NFL players are the heroes, front office coaches, GMs, those are the villains. Those are the bad guys. Man, if we could just leave it up to the players, I mean, that's obviously we know that's not the way it goes. There is the flip side of every coin. There's some bad clips of Joe Schoen out there that make him really paint him in a bad light. Again, there's no way Joe Schoen gets this job if that's the full story. I mean, that's what it comes down to. Obviously, the off-season Hard Knocks thing, in-season Hard Knocks, again, it is made for TV. I, as a scout, have never watched full episodes. I've watched plenty of clips, watched some of it. Again, I just don't believe it. It is reality TV, and you can cut it and do whatever you want to make things look the way it is.
Hard Knocks makes me irate. And I mean, everyone is all, oh man, did you see Hard Knocks? I've never seen I've seen one full episode. I watched one of the Giants episodes. It was fascinating. I will admit that, but I don't know that it tells the whole story. I think that all these people are put in difficult situations, and it is cut the way that they want it to be cut. And was it the Bears and the Giants who both did Hard Knocks series this year, and both may have new head coaches next year? I mean, it's like the old Sports Illustrated cover jinx, you know? I mean, you subject yourself to this, and then things don't go well, and then it just feeds the beast when it comes to social media and the clips that are forever and all those kind of things. I mean, what a terrible situation you're in if you've got that. And so I certainly have sympathy for all the people that are involved and unfortunately have to deal with all that crap.
Yeah. So if we're talking patience, Neil, so we're seeing 4 to 5 year contracts, maybe eventually some 6-year contracts for head coaches, for GMs. That trickle down has not happened at all as we start thinking about directors. Again, depending on your front office, you're going to have a different level of input, a different level of responsibility, a different level of decision making. The standard for most scouts, directors, college directors is still 2 years. Rolling contract. Again, you're going to always really have a year out for the most part. At what point do scouts, and I'm going to say band together, I'm not going to say unionize, but I'll say band together to start pressing, hey, all this stress is put on the organization. I've got a job to do as a pro director, college director. I am primarily responsible for college directing, for pro directing. Hey, I need a 3-year contract. Now let's go with the 3-year contract, or you're paying me even more for my 2-year contract. Scouts, I would argue, have almost no leverage. Again, I've experienced that. It's word of mouth if you want to find out a lot of information. You hope people are telling you the truth. Do you think we will get to a spot? Are we at a spot where it's time for, hey, if I'm going to come over and join you as your director of player personnel, hey, I need a 3 or 4 year deal. I'm going to go alongside you. I want a long contract, and we'll be in this together. Do you see that landscape changing?
I don't, because it's still so. The thing about player evaluation is it is so murky, and you don't see when a head coach appears in the news, you see his win-loss record next to him. You never see that with GMs, and I don't know that you should. I don't know if there's that kind of accountability level there. It digs me a little bit when you see quarterbacks with 1-loss records, because there's so much more to it than that. But I think that is one reason why scouts are seen as interchangeable. And it is, I mean, the line of people trying to get those jobs is so long, and it's so difficult to get them. And in some ways it's hard to hold on to them. And you don't see guys that are on the road for 20, 25 years. And so for that reason, I think that everyone's kind of afraid to try to exert any kind of leverage or say, well, I'll only come with these kind of conditions or whatever. Maybe if you've got 10, 15 years in and you're at that national level and you're getting ready to achieve director level and you've got that relationship with the GM to where you've got some kind of leverage, that's when I've kind of gotten phone calls from people saying, hey, what should I ask for? But generally speaking, man, Roderick, I mean, it's difficult. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke up your skirt or retell your story, but you were a very effective evaluator with a team that had been very successful, and they're willing to throw you away over something as ridiculous as what they did. And that's just the nature of the beast. And I think for that reason, it's really difficult to kind of assert yourself and say, well, hey, I got to have this if you're going to bring me in. It's just such a job that is in demand right now. And that leads to just not having a lot of weight when it comes to what you're going to do or what your asks and demands are.
Yeah. The trickle down is, again, at some point you want a trickle down. If a GM is going to get a 6-year deal, knowing you've realistically got 3 to 4 to show positive signs, again, an owner is going to eat those 2 years. Mm-hmm. We see it again. We saw it with the Panthers and their last coach that they fired. I think he had a 5-year deal, 6-year deal. 1 year will pay out the rest. We will deal with it and figure it out. Yeah. So again, to your point, if you are an up and coming name, if you're hired as a DPP for the next GM of the Jets, again, standard is a 2-year contract. Again, you're working on that same 2-year contract that all the rest of your. But again, is that the first spot where somebody, again, maybe I'm encouraging, ask for a 3-year deal, because again, the trickle down is going to help the industry. The going thought that anybody can scout. I can pick some young guys off the road, some young girls off the road, some young people off the road, stick them on the road. In 2 years, they're going to learn to scout. I think that's baloney. Again, it is a job just like anything else. Now, there are a lot of people, a lot of candidates, a lot of good candidates, still plenty of bad people scouting, though. So what's the give? What's the take? Again, it's not going to happen maybe this year, next year, 2 years, 3 years. But again, if we start to see 3-year contracts at that director, executive level, hey, maybe it's only a matter of time before that becomes 4 and this becomes 3. Again, if it's a scouting community, again, this is where I know Neil's, Twitter's open, his DMs are open. If you don't have his email, again, mine as well. Again, if you need help in the scouting community, a spot where there isn't a ton of help, again, that's what Inside the League was, big reason why it was built, to have those resources. Again, it is going to be an interesting road as we go through it. Football's changing, scouts are changing. Hard to not think about some of these guys that have been scouts for forever. Again, they're still doing it, being on the road, moving up the ranks. Again, hopefully there is a path for them to move forward. Neil, as we think about that patience, again, a year or two ago, there are teams that you would have been crazy to even ask about. But as we sit here now, how much patience is going to have to be shown for teams like the 49ers, who all of a sudden are going to have to make a quarterback decision with Brock Purdy, pay him, draft somebody else, negotiate a contract. Zach Taylor and the Bengals, again, all of a sudden just can't seem to get it together since they were in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago. The Dolphins, you've got Mike McDaniel, you've got, Tua playing really well again, but could be one hit away from him being done. You've got Chris Greer there. Again, a year and a half ago, even at the beginning of the season, you've been like, these guys are safe, no question. I mean, they may be 6 months from being on the hot seat going into the 2025 season. Are any of these franchises going to have to show patience in the short or long term for these guys?
I don't think patience pays off when it comes to quarterbacks. I think you've got to make a decision. You've got to be willing to eat whatever it took to, if you make a big play for a quarterback and it doesn't work out, you've got to move on quickly. On the other hand, I think we're seeing Bryce Young starting to see some positives from him. But I don't know. It's really difficult. With the Niners, I mean, they made the big play to draft the quarterback from the small school. Didn't work out, but hey, it's the Niners. It always works out, right? Brock Purdy comes in and just really saves them. that I was one of the big critics of the Broncos for moving on as quickly as they did from Russell Wilson and eating a major part of his contract, but it's worked out really well for the Broncos so far. And so I think you've got to look at those examples and say, hey, I guess you've got to maybe patience isn't the best thing to do when it comes to quarterbacks. Maybe on the other hand, it is better with head coaches. And I think, and especially GMs, and one point I want to make about GMs and scouting, as much as you and I think we know about scouting and front offices and all those kind of things, and I think I know some things. You get on Twitter and there's still people out there the day after draft when saying, well, yeah, obviously they fired him. I mean, look how bad their draft was. That is not why scouts get fired. That is not why guys move. It's got nothing to do with the picks they made 24 hours ago, and that's absurd to think that. But that's still the perception out there, and I think that's one reason why so many decisions are made that we kind of question, because so many people don't really understand. And you alluded to the fact we don't know what's going on in these buildings. But to answer your question, I think you have to move quickly on the quarterbacks. I think that's been shown. I don't think that there's necessarily the case study on head coaches, although, like you said, I mean, you get 1 year, maybe two, and if things aren't looking really good and really promising and you don't have a lot of momentum, you're gone. And I think that we probably will see a lot of changes in the offseason for that reason as well.
Yeah. Again, you think about it, as we're sitting here, we've got I believe one GM opening, maybe more. Again, numbers would tell us what? There's going to be 4 to 5, Neil, is that right?
Usually 3 to 4, 4 to 5.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the reason.
I look around the league and it's you can always find people who and reasons why, hey, I could see it. Maybe I agree with it. Maybe I disagree with it. I can understand why. But again, maybe a second one here that we've already talked about in the Giants. And again, maybe 2 or 3 more. Again, those are going to be hard spots to think about those changing, those moving on. As we think about, we're at this stage, we're November, we're Thanksgiving, teams are finalizing reports. There's also probably some conversations, official or unofficial, in the background, in the wings happening right now. Again, the Jets have already announced they're using the 33rd team, Rick Spielman, Mike Tannenbaum, to kind of lead that. I don't know if I would say lead the charge, be a part of it. What does that mean for potential candidates for that job specifically? But again, the 33rd team, well-connected, bunch of really good names over there. What does it mean for those people in those jobs as they kind of work through that?
Well, I mean, I applaud them for bringing in people who've done it before. I think that's important. You hear about the search firms that are hired, and some of them are better than others. But I mean, I would have a lot of confidence in Mike and Rick. I don't know Mike, but I know Rick a little bit. I could see, for the fact that they've been in the league, I could see them bringing people from their past. I think Jamal Stevenson, who's the senior personnel executive of the Vikings. I think Ryan Monin, so I think is the DPP there. Both guys, the Vikings are, I don't know if I'd call them one of the NFL Blue Bloods, but I do think they're one of the more successful franchises out there. I think Rick had a pretty successful run when he was there. Mike's had experience in Miami as well as New York, so he's going to have a lot of people that he's got that he holds in high regard as well. So it'll be fun to see kind of who surfaces. Will it be the same popular candidates that we always see, or will it be some people that are a little bit more off the grid? I gave you 2 names that are a little bit more off the grid. There may be more to come. I'm excited to see where that goes, and I hope that some of the people that maybe aren't the media picks will still get some play there. I would expect that whoever is named is more of the traditional GM, given the backgrounds of Mike and Rick, over maybe more of a kind of a cap guy or an analytics guy or something like that. I could be surprised, but I think given that their backgrounds and how they came up, I think they're going to be more tradition-minded, and so we'll see where that goes.
When we talked about GMs, what owners are looking for, again, we talked face of the franchise. They've got to be good in front of the camera. They've got to be an ownership guy. As you're thinking about, all right, separate myself from what owners are thinking, if Neil Stratton is the owner of a football team, what are maybe 2 or 3 of the top traits, the top qualities my GM, and if you want to go specifically in the New York market, they have to be able to do what?
Well, I think today you have to be able. I mean, I criticize teams for wanting to win the press conference, and I think that is a little bit short-sighted. But at the same time, I think you've got to be engaged to some degree on the fan side and have a perception of how things are going to look on your moves. You're going to be looked and be able to be willing and able to sell them. I think that that's one reason you've seen some failings on GMs is they're not really as comfortable in front of the camera and not willing to really give the reasons for what they've done. So I guess I would say effective communicator. I would want someone who has got, I mean, I'm sorry, I'm tradition minded. I've got to have someone who is well grounded in the college draft and has connections there and can find out the stuff that you don't read about in, with your favorite draft expert or whatever. I think I need someone who's got to be able to build that. And I think that they've got to know someone who's comfortable in the pro game. When I say pro, I mean pro scouting that they can bring in to serve that area. And I think the third trait really is they've got to have people around them that they can trust, that they're willing to listen to. Because on one hand, you've got to be able to project the vision for the team, but I think you also got to be willing to change on the fly. And I guess that's humility. Maybe that's patience. Maybe it's just being limited on your ego. I mean, I've been a big fan of Elliott Wolf. I think that the Patriots have had their struggles this year, but I think they got the quarterback right, and I think that blue skies are ahead. I don't think that Elliott and Alonzo have much of an ego. I've never seen it. I mean, I can tell you stories about those guys coming up to me when I was doing other things and introducing themselves, like I'm the important one. I'm not at all important. I mean, I'm as unimportant as anyone out there, and I don't mean that as a humble brag. I mean, I just think they're genuine people, and I think they embody what I'm talking about when it comes to being willing to listen to others, being able to read the trends in the league, and being able to change your mind if that's what it takes. I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. I get that the ego again in a league full of egos. Again, be that egoless guy in a front office full of people who want to be heard. We got 2 ears and 1 mouth, and that adage is always going to show up. Listen to the people that you put in charge, but at the same time, you got the job, and at some point, you might have to flex a little bit. And again, there's balancing that line. Again, coming from an evaluation standpoint, but understanding the cap, understanding the pro game, the college game, all important. And again, having the pulse. Again, that is one of those things. Again, whether it's a press conference, whether it is a message to a team, what message to a staff. Again, depending on your role as a GM, you may be more or less involved, your style, your head coach's style. At the end of the day, you've got to be able to connect and be a leader of men. And I don't think that's ever going to change in the game of football. As the type of player changes, that's not going to change. As the game changes, that's not going to change. Important to be that leader that you can step up there, do what has to be done. Again, leadership, great spot to be up there until, the arrows start flying. It could be a really, really unpopular spot. And the really good ones stand in there, take the arrows and let everybody else keep working because they know at the end of the day that the pyramid below is holding them up. So it's going to be fascinating. Again, like you said, Rick, Mike, they do a good job. 3013 does a good job covering the league and in what they do. Again, always plenty of disagreements with stuff they put out over there. But again, that's the game of football. You're going to have disagreements, and to be able to talk about it is the important part. Rick had a good run in Minnesota and has a lot of good pieces, a lot of good people around the league that are going to go to bat for him whenever his name comes up. So. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to see. So a lot is still going to change. Again, as we sit here and think about the positive side of it, the new jobs that are going to open up, there's also the flip side that good people are going to get let go. And again, a lot of times it's for no other reason than I just didn't know that person. Hopefully they land on their feet. Hopefully the good ones continue to do it, scout, in whatever capacity, find a new team, new home. But again, there's going to be good people that end up, out the door. And again, there's always going to be those head scratching moves. Again, is it one of those teams that we mentioned, or is it a team that, is still out there? And, we've got a month and, a little over a month month and a half of the season left. Again, plenty still to be decided. There's going to be teams that we weren't expecting making a run, teams just falling apart. It happens every year in the NFL. And, that's part of the reason we love football, right? We've got the NCAA, a 12-team college football playoff that's unset. We've got an NFL playoff list that's set. We've got division leaders that are going to change. We've got an NFC South that no one seems to want to take the grip on. And yet here, Todd Bowles, a patient Buccaneers team, man, they could make a run here late and, do some good things. Hey, Neil, even the Saints have a chance still. Maybe.
Hope springs eternal in New Orleans. I mean, it's always next year, or waiting for next year, right? But I think that the energy and the attitude that Jaron Ridley has brought has been unmistakable, and I hold no hopes for this season. But it certainly is interesting what's happened the last couple weeks, and maybe better things are ahead. We'll see.
Yeah. Well, no matter if you're coaching, if you're scouting, if you're anywhere in between, trust the work you do. Put your name on it. Take the lunch pail. Do the right things. In the end, I believe you have to believe all that's going to come back in the end for you in a positive way. So just continue to go do it and do it the right way. Speaking of doing the right things, agents, between SRA season, the portal getting hot, where are you at with all your leads, your clients, and everything else you do with your agency? Let Agent Live 360 help. The number one CRM in the sports world, built by agents for agents. Do not let a single thing fall through the cracks. Sign up today for a demo with me, or sign up and test the software yourself with code TRIAL90. That's TRIAL90 at checkout. 90-day trial, no sign-up fee, just $10 a month. I can promise you will not find something better for the price, the all-in-one that you need. That is Agent Live 360. Next week, we get to talk about players again. I'm excited about that. This time, Jordan Reed, our friend and draft analyst over at ESPN. We got Dane Brugler. A couple weeks ago, we went through a bunch of positions, probably hone in on just a few of these. Yes, quarterbacks will be one of them. We'll get Jordan's QB1. We'll get his thoughts on that first round. You're not going to want to miss that one. Any players you specifically want to hear about, make sure you let us know. Of course, Neil is at Inside the League. I'm at Right Step ADV. We can ask Jordan specifically about those players, get his thoughts, where they're going to go, what are good fits. So make sure you hit us up there. Thanksgiving. Time to give thanks. Also a time to start signing SRAs, and seasons for some players officially draw to a close. A time to hit submit on final fall reports for a bunch of those scouts out there. So no matter what landscape you're in, what you're doing, keep working, keep doing the right things, and keep scouting.